Let's make another video. Add this to the arsenal here. So here's the passenger side door. Window still broken out, although I did order one. I found one on eBay for under $100, so got that on order because I don't want the weather to get to all of the goods. So this is the OEM door, and you can see that little nice perimeter ring. And in a previous video, I discussed what I think is a good idea for implementation of some door speakers. Here, I have cut that section away. I have sit the door in place. It's not attached, but this is a representation of that result. I like it. It works pretty good. So this is just 1/2-inch plywood, so it's somewhat flexible. And I literally just drilled and put a bunch of screws to sort of rough it into place. And I had some leftover cutouts, and I went ahead and used that to mark. That's roughly a 10-inch diameter driver, the OD, total outside diameter, roughly. And 210s kind of fits, kind of looks okay. The problem is that if I shut the door, there is only, I don't know, 2.5 inches between, like me, the bottom of the seat here, and I've got to have 4 or 5 inches or more for the driver to stick out, and I just don't know that I want that. It's kind of tight now that I look at it. The fact that the window power mechanism is more up here means that you might be able to inlay this driver a little bit. I was hoping to just build an enclosure and use this as a solid back and isolate the sound completely to a sealed enclosure, or maybe ported, but otherwise a full-on enclosure, and not vent the energy into that back of the door. But just having closed the door with me sitting here, there's no room. Now down here, I don't think it's gonna be a big deal to put configure the enclosure so that this portion does stick out far enough for a driver to mount. Like, yeah, it might be kind of tight here for demoing purposes, which is like the whole point of this build. We may end up doing one door wide open. At the moment, I'm thinking that it's going to be optimum to just have the windows rolled down, doors closed, for the windiest experience. In my head, the surface area of an open door or 2 rolled down windows should be very similar, but in reality, we're probably going to get a little bit of a stronger acoustic load with 2 windows down, door closed. But in the spirit of that, let's see, open this door back up. Will it stay? Yes. I'm starting to think that 210s is just a little bit difficult with the given space we have here. And, you know, it would be fine. Like, who cares if it squishes you? But maybe a single 10 or a single 12 there. And then more or less nothing here is just for space sake. Maybe it wouldn't be that big of a deal. I don't know. I'm just so conflicted. Down for Sound makes a Neo driver that's only like 4.5 inches deep, and it may not be that difficult, especially if I can identify that there is space, whatever the space between this panel and the actual inner workings of the door is. I might be able to do a cutout and then a recess, and then just put a plate on the back so that the driver, I guess we don't have to have it stick out as far, and then still be able to use this as an enclosure. The Neo drivers are more expensive, and I'm trying to do this on the cheap. But I think that at a minimum, I've got to start. I've got a kind of a blank canvas, open, clean slate. I can do a lot of things here. I'm really hoping to sort out securement of this wooden panel to the inner steel frame of the door, because I still think we're going to get a ton of flex. Although this plastic panel has lots of screws around the perimeter, I just don't see it being the kind of structural integrity. Like, at a minimum, if we could get like one or two, this is a rough estimate of where the door handle screws were located, and I'm hoping to be able to utilize those. So when I say sealed enclosure, roughly sealed, like I still intend to have screws from the steel structure of the door poking through into this potential enclosure and then secured, because I would like that to be tightly locked together. I also hope to take a piece of foam of some kind and maybe glue it to the inside of this, so that when this door goes on, it squishes that, compresses that foam, and we get a some sort of a compression seal to reduce some of the vibrations and hopefully dampen some of the potential for noise in the door. That's sort of the plan. That's sort of what I'm thinking. But here's kind of where we're at with that. In order to achieve this, I literally just removed a little material and test fit, removed a little material and test fit, removed a little material and test fit. And it's still not quite right. If you look where I've got some zigzags here, I've probably got to round over the inside of this panel a little bit, because there is a slight contour here. It's not a perfectly flat edge. And I appear to need the same thing here. It's flat here, but it immediately like bevels or chamfers or rolls down to this surface here. And so I think that I just need to take and lightly sand this area at the edge of this wooden panel to get this, because it just kind of lifts just a hair in those areas. How many screws are necessary? I don't know. I happen to have on hand from some kit of hardware I had bought a while back a bunch of screws that are roughly what we need. These screws have a nut on the back, so it's not like I'm threading into the wood. This has actually got a nut on the back of these. Closing the door again, because of the way that this is configured, however far out this enclosure sticks, it's not going to interfere with the dash in any way. It will interfere with your feet. Perhaps it'll be a wise decision for me to purchase a grill, some sort of speaker grill that is the right shape, because as tight, and certainly if we do 210s, and maybe I will. Maybe I'll just be like, it is what it is. It'll squish you. In order to clear this door, this driver may have to get located a little bit higher, which I seem to have the real estate to do so. Move it up higher. And if anything, it'll be like a nice shelf. So there's like a shelf for you to rest your arm. And at a minimum, but if I put grills in there, then I won't care so much that those are riding right on top of you. It's going to be a really weird acoustical experience, perhaps, with that mid-bass, mid-range driver like touching you. I still think that at the moment, for budget's sake, I'm going to buy an active digital signal processed head unit. It's about a $200 bill. Pioneer makes one. Not a digital display, but it does have a volume knob, which is important, and it has the DSP that I want. That's got three-way active, and so if we do subwoofer, mid-range, and then I'm thinking about doing compression horn and just, figuring out a way to secure the thing so that it's just attractive enough, but having both of those left and right, and that'll be an entire system. It'll be simple, and with compression horn and 1 to 2 10-inch drivers, that should be enough, plenty, at least enough to give you an acoustically enjoyable experience while hopefully achieving some wind. Yeah, that's it. That's the video. That's progress. That's thought. I like this as a rough start. And like I said, if I can identify that there's plenty of space, any space, we can cut circles out where the driver magnet will go, and then I can sort of put like an offset ring and then a back plate out of wood to allow driver displacement, like the motor structure to recess into here, and then I won't have to make the enclosure protrude out quite so far. We might be able to achieve something like 3 inches, 3.5 inches as opposed to 5 or 6 inches, which at first I thought, who cares? Well, now that I'm sitting in the vehicle, that space is quite tight. And, as much as I do want to make this I don't want to compromise your, creature comfort too much. Like, it's got to kind of be realistic. So yeah, those are those are the balls I'm juggling. Those are the things I'm working on. But so far, this looks to be a viable option. So before I glue anything to this panel, I should be able to duplicate it, right? So we'll just clamp a piece of wood to this and then do like a flush trim cut all the way around and replicate this to be the mirror to be that side. So that actually becomes easy to do. And if I just sort of do a little bit of progress here and then replicate on the other side, I should be able to do the two doors simultaneously, keep them relatively symmetrical, and easy to keep track of how this build goes. That's where we're at. I don't believe that running a ton of 6.5s or even a handful of 8s is as optimal as running a 10 or a 12-inch driver. Certainly cost, like you're going to pay between $60 and $100 for, between $40 and $100 for a 6.5-inch driver, and you're going to pay somewhere between, $60 and $140 for a 12-inch driver. And I don't know what the math is. Something like 4 6.5s is equivalent to a 12 as far as cone surface area goes. And if it is true that you can get a 10, 12-inch driver to have the power handling of 200 watts or something, you should be able to generate a lot of acoustic energy. And I'm much more a fan of a single 10 than I am a bunch of 6.5s. That's just a personal opinion. Simplicity, cost, and like dollar for output's sake. A 6.5-inch driver is still going to have a lot. You could get very thin drivers. There are drivers that are designed to be much flatter for limited space. Those drivers cost more. So we're probably not. I'm really not going to take those drivers into account. I would rather. If money was no object, then, this design might look different. But I'm going to compromise my seating comfort for cost. And we're likely to decrease the number of drivers from what might be cool to do just to do a single 10 or 12-inch driver that's down there out of the way. And this panel may remain somewhat flat. So I'm not inclined to put tweeters. Like, I know that there are people that go, "Oh man, you got two spots for 2 bullet tweeters, and that would just be this beautiful." It's like, for acoustical quality, for hi-fi, if you have a whole bunch of different sound sources in different locations, for one thing, it's nearly impossible to time align them. If I had a tweeter here and a tweeter down there, and if I put tweeters here or tweeters up here or something, there's no such thing as time alignment. Now, you might be able to get a much louder acoustic experience, but as far as principle goes, I would like confidence that I'm able to get an accurate time alignment first and then be loud second. It's like, as far as thought process goes, to me, you really need. This is how I feel. I want it to sound good first and be loud second. And so I want to sound good, be affordable, and be as loud as possible. And loud, to a degree, takes a back seat. I realize that this is not taking a back seat. But having a lot of cone area, I should have very high sonic accuracy with the subwoofers. At a desirable listening level, and you'll never, if they're sounding good, you're never going to damage or hurt the drivers. So I've got acoustic potential there. Well, okay, so back to my thought process here. I want the tweeters up in front of you, facing you, so that you get all the sound directivity where they need to go, and then just tube is much easier to time align. And for simplicity's sake, I think that people say that putting your mids in your kick is highly desirable. It's often harder to get the doors to sound good. You get vibrations and reverberations, and there's drama there. And so I've heard a lot of people say that sonically it's easier to get, but I've already got what I consider too much like of a limited space. And so I'm just not going to do them in the kick. You could. I'm not going to. I would much rather have a 10-inch driver in that bottom area of the door than anything down in the kick area. So that's how I feel about it. I had considered just putting a tweeter or a compression horn in the door, just doing a 10 and a horn and then nothing up here. I thought about it. I don't think it's optimum, and I'm just not going to do that. I would much rather, and this will be intrusive, like this, the compression horn and the actual like horn that I'm going to use, it's 5 or 6 inches long, and it's 5 or 6 inches, like it's going to be a monstrosity. And I don't believe I'm going to do any kind of dramatic fiberglass or enclosure work. I'm just going to put a bracket that comes over, that horn bolts to, and that the compression driver sits recessed in here, and hopefully we can configure it in such a way that it doesn't like vibrate or move around too much. There's a chance that it'll get bolted, like this bracket that I am imagining building, and even if it's out of wood, but I imagine bolting it here and maybe here. And because it's a compression horn, because it doesn't need an enclosure, and there's a certain tackiness that we're going to deploy there, but I think that that's the plan. I'm not sure that I'm wanting to compromise these AC vents, but I do admit I have considered it, and it's not out of the question. If I can put a compression horn right in here, if I can modify this in a functional way, that would actually be a really cool, really simple, and then I wouldn't have to, I don't know, if I can figure that out, if I can remove these and find a little horn that would go in there that's going to cover the frequency range I want, I'm not against that idea. I'm not against the idea of hanging them. Like if I use this area here, I might be putting the, what's it called? Your sun visor back up, because if you just ever drive in the sun, you just absolutely need them. I took them down. There used to be a big tray up here that was falling apart and kind of messed up, and I took it all off. And whether we put a visor back up or not, there's a chance I could build, or I have this, there's a potential I could build some kind of a bracket and figure out a cool way to hang the tweeter array, tweeter assembly, or compression horn from up here. And I think that would still give you a very good acoustical experience. It's not so high that it's over your head. It's still far enough in front of me that I think it would work. I like the idea of potentially leaving these in, because especially on this side, if we're going to have people demoing, getting in and out, it's convenient to have for people to get in and out of the vehicle. Yeah. I don't think I want to do anything with the center channel, even though I've got all this, like, this space. Maybe we'll put a bobblehead character up here so that, he can sit there and headbang while we're demoing. But anything, it'll be an aesthetic experience and not an acoustical one from the center. I'm going to remain 2-channel, left and right. Yeah, I've ranted. That's all I got. Until next time.